Right, there. I think that's probably sorted the problem out. Right, hello everybody. Welcome to the Africam Show, powered by explore.org. My name is James Hendry. It's lovely to have you with us here on the banks of the Olifants River with some beefaloes, which seem to be enjoying the last of the season's greenery. Please remember that you can talk to us. You can send us your questions or your comments or jokes if you'd like to, as long as they're appropriate. I currently can't hear much in the way of what's going on there. So if I'm not commenting on the sound, it's because I can't hear what's going on there. Okay, so we've got some buffalo. Looks like 3 old bulls. And, well, shame. I guess their life of wassailing in the herd is over. Now, it's not always over for these bulls that are on their own. They will often rejoin the herds from time to time. But that chap, especially on the left, looks like his days of yore are long gone. I feel sympathy for you, my friend. We're all going that way, some of us already there. Hello, Rolling Trouble. You're from Washington State. Nice to hear from you. Thank you for being with us today on the banks of the Olifants River. We will, of course, be going not only to the banks of the Olifants River, we'll be going to various parts of southern Africa where Africam has got cameras, in the northern Cape of South Africa, the northwest province of South Africa, the Limpopo province of South Africa, the Mpumalanga province of South Africa, and have I left any out? Yes, the Gauteng province. I believe that our Gauteng one, which is our black eagle nest camera, is down currently, so we're not going to go and look at the black eagles, but we can certainly discuss the goings on at the black eagle nest. And if you have been hiding under a rock, or perhaps you've just joined us, remember now that we were in fact, remember that sorry, I'm being distracted, but in fact in Baluli we're at Tembe right now. This is good to know. Okay, good. Right, well, we're at Tembe Game Reserve up in northern KwaZulu-Natal. That was the province that I'd left out. Anyway, back, the same applies to these buffalo. Back to the black eagles. If you have been living under a rock, or perhaps you've just joined us, the black eagle chicks have hatched. One hatched, and then 3 days later the next one hatched. And as is unfortunately the case with black eagles and many raptors, including owls and indeed some seabirds such as skuas, the first chick has killed the second chick in an act of what we call obligate canism or obligate siblicide, and that's fairly standard stuff. So although from a human perspective it's a bit sad, it's perfectly normal for the black eagles, and it does mean that the first black eagle chick is very healthy and strong, if slightly murderous. Good. Hello, Stephanie. You're in Virginia in the USA. Hello. And OMG23, hello to you too. We are now... well, it looks... I'm not sure where that is, actually. It looks like in Koro, actually. I think there was a giraffe there, and now we're looking at a whole lot of impala that look absolutely terrified out of their wits. They're running somewhere. I think it's probably just horsing about or impalaing about. I think that's what's going on there. Remember, we're coming to the end of the rut. And as we come to the end of the rut, so the impala males will still be chasing the females around, although they're almost certainly wasting their time at this stage. And by that I mean those ewes that you can see running about are probably impregnated already. They'll have little baby impala embryos growing within them, and that mating would have taken place during the course of the dark phase of the moon in May. That's when it normally happens in the Kruger region. So that's quite cool. And slowly these impala that have been shouting and roaring at each other over the last 2 or 3 months will start to become more friendly. The bachelors or males or rams will sort of settle into friendly bachelorhood and brotherhood again. And the ewes will settle into their nursery herds and await the arrival of their babies 7 months from now. It's quite fun, this, because it actually looks like the ewes are just having a bit of fun. They're jumping around, flashing their white tails at each other and doing that little stotting behavior that you would normally associate with sort of the terror that comes with running away from wild dogs. But sometimes it's just for fun. Hello, Cindy Shelton. You say, hello, everybody. Always look forward to seeing the show. Good. Thank you, Cindy. It's lovely to be back here. Hello, Jan Powles from Arizona. And hello, Sergeant Pepper from Florida. You're so happy to see that you and your lovely bride are having a girl. Oh, thank you, yes. Not currently on the camera, Sergeant Pepper, but yes, apparently me and my child bride, Kirsten, will be producing an offspring of the female variety during the course of October. Terrifying thought. Exciting as well, nevertheless. Now, while we're sitting here at Nkoro, remember that, or perhaps not remember, but a reminder that Quarantine the male leopard was seen there last night. Now, Quarantine the male leopard, for those of you who don't know, comes from a very famous lineage. He was daughter to Kurula, the peaceful one, who was a very famous leopardess of the area. And in fact, we haven't seen Quarantine for some time. I heard rumor of his brother, and we in fact went looking for his brother, who's now known as the Senegal bushmale, when I was at Londolozi the other day, and that's just south of Nkoro here. We didn't find him. So both those two boys, Quarantine and Kunyuma, or the Senegal bushmale, are both still alive and well, and must be around 8 years old now. And that's good to know, because Quarantine hadn't been seen for some time, I seem to remember. Look at this wonderful time that the impala are having, doing their stotting. That stotting apparently is supposed to show fitness to potential predators. I've seen them doing it in front of wild dogs. Sometimes I've seen the wild dogs then move on to other impala. Sometimes I've seen the impala doing the stotting, not doing much else, because life ended for the stotting impala. So I think it sometimes works, and sometimes it's obviously a waste of time. Hello, Amber. CO, you're from Colorado. You say you love these shows and learn so much. I'm so glad you learn so much from them. Thank you for doing them and sharing your knowledge. Well, Amber, you know, it's quite fun, actually. We quite enjoy doing these shows. Righty, we're going to leave Nkoro here in the Kruger Park and go up to the Northwest Province to Madikwe Game Reserve and Tau. This camera is at Tau, where there is a Waterbuck wrestling match going on. Not a very enthusiastic one. I don't think it's a serious fight. In fact, there are two sort of unserious wrestling matches going on. Interestingly, Waterbuck do kill each other more than most antelope do when they get into spats over ladies or territory, mostly ladies. But in this case, we've got 4 youngish bulls and one much bigger one. And he will tolerate their presence there at his water as long as they don't try and get frisky with his ladies or start marking territory, which is quite nice of him, really, I think. I've always found the waterbuck to be a rather underappreciated antelope. I was recently on safari for about 28 days, and I think if we stopped twice for waterbuck, it was a lot. We stopped much more for impala. Perhaps it's the drab grey colour that makes them less appealing than some other antelope to some people, not me. But that drab grey colour is an absolutely brilliant colour, and if you look carefully now, in fact this is quite a good time to look at it, what you can see is that as the vegetation changes from the rich green of the summer to the browns and greys of the dry season and the winter months, you can see how brilliant that grey colour is. They will eventually blend very nicely into the more sparse vegetation when it turns to the grey-brown colour. That is almost exactly that of the waterbuck. Well done, waterbuck. Clever choice of colour. They are called waterbuck apparently because they like to run into water when they're running away from predators. Lots of animals do that. And so I think they just happen to get the name. They're not always around water. They're quite frequently around water, but you know, they're not always around water. In fact, they're most commonly found on ecotone regions, which are the sort of meeting places, should I say, between two vegetation types. So on a seep line, perhaps, between a combretum woodland or a little thicket of silver cluster leaves, that sort of thing. Ah, big farf animal. Here is an elephant, in case you were concerned and didn't know how to identify that mammal. It is an elephant, and this elephant is at Tembe, which is nice. Looks like above middling age, just enjoying himself a drink. I'm sure that his weather there in northern KwaZulu-Natal is far more pleasant than it is here where I'm sitting in Johannesburg, where it feels like the Antarctic winter has come to visit. Something's made him a little nervous. Quite interesting. Oh, I think, you know what I think he's doing? I think he's got an itchy heel, and I also think that he's just having a bit of a play with those rocks. I'm convinced that elephant bulls particularly get bored of wandering about the bush eating all day long, and they find things to entertain themselves, such as rocks. I've seen them picking up rocks and putting them in the middle of the road. I've seen them just sort of leaning on trees and pulling down branches and not eating them. I've often had them come up to the vehicle where I was sitting and just kind of have a sniff and a look around. And I think this guy is kind of not really taking drinking very seriously. He's seeing if there's an interesting rock. There we go. He's just blown. That's like a kid blowing a bubble in his milkshake. He's taken some into his trunk and then just blasted it onto the ground. So probably a youngish bull, maybe, I mean, I say middle age, but having looked at his forehead there and the width of his head, I would guess sitting around about 25 years, maybe 30. Yeah, so not drinking hugely enthusiastically, just sort of spraying the water into his mouth and then out again. Lynn, you say absolutely beautiful and majestic. Certainly, and even more so in person when you see them. They are just the most spectacular animals. I was going to see if I can rectify the fact that I have no sound, because I've solved my problem. There we go. Now I've got some sound. Now we can enjoy the sounds of the birds. Now I can tell you what we're listening to. There's some bulbuls calling. And the red-eyed dove, which apparently is them saying, I am a red-eyed dove, I am a red-eyed dove. And also the ubiquitous and incredibly noisy Egyptian goose. Somebody with an unknown name says, this looks like a nice place to visit. Yes, especially this time of year, unknown name. Tembe is beautiful any time of the year, but just now, when it's cooler, it's a beautiful place to visit. It's nice and pleasant for those who like to escape the really cold parts of the country. The rain stopped. It's a lovely place. Gigi, you say, what is my favorite bird call? My favorite bird call is that of the Cape robin, which, does it occur up in Tembe? I think it might occur up in Tembe. Lots of different robin species. Hello, stuck in bed. How often do I run into the same elephant? Well, where I live now, stuck in bed, I never run into elephants, sadly. They don't have many in downtown Craighall Park, where I find myself. Run into the odd car and the odd irate person, but very seldom an elephant, sadly. He's having a bit of a scratch. I think what you mean, stuck in bed, is how often would this elephant come and drink at this waterhole? And I think you'd find the answer is quite frequently. And the reason for that is that Tembe is a fenced reserve of limited extent, and there will be limited water holes, and so this elephant will probably come relatively frequently to a place like this waterhole. There are those buffalo that we opened the show on in the background as our elephant ambles off into the glorious afternoon of northern KwaZulu-Natal. Stuck in bed, you say, what cool palms next to him? Yes, very lovely palms. Those are called Ilala palms, from which one can apparently make an intoxicating wine. You stick it in, it's very popular in that part of the world. You can tap the sap, let it sit for a while. I don't think you have to let it sit for as long as a fine Bordeaux or Rhone Valley blend. You can probably drink it a couple of days after you've tapped it, and then lie down on your back for a number of hours before getting up with a headache. So those are the Ilala palms. You can hear an acacia pie barbet as well calling. Just to let you know, we have tried to sort out the Black Eagle Nest camera, and unfortunately we haven't managed to do it just yet. So we're not going to go to the Black Eagle during the course of this show. But if anybody would like to discuss the Black Eagles, feel free, and I shall do my best to discuss them, even though we're looking at something else. Just lovely sounds there. Perfect time of the year to be visiting northern KwaZulu. No wind, calm. I'd really love to be there right now. Sitting perhaps on that little termite mound, observing the scene. Sergeant Pepper, you say these cameras make you terribly homesick at times. I cannot wait to visit Zimbabwe and South Africa again. Sergeant Pepper, yes, I'm sure it does make you feel homesick. I feel extremely nostalgic and homesick just looking at the screen, and I'm not sitting, and I'm in the... So, yeah, I can imagine that it does make you very homesick, especially the sounds. Oh, and there's the gorgeous sound of the southern boo-boo. Always such a relaxing sound to listen to. And the odd oxpecker. And they're the birds that eat the ticks off the beefaloes. And once again the red-eyed dove starts up. Wonderful. Now we're going to go back across to Nkoro, where apparently we have got some zebra. I'm not sure if they're still there. Still there. Hello, zebras. And you can see the grass slowly starting to turn to its winter grey and brown. It's still by no means into the dry season yet. We're at the end of May, and the business end of the dry season is only going to sort of come in September, when the heat starts to build before the rains come, hopefully in November. But that's so far away in the future that I'm not going to mention it again. Stuck in bed, you want to know how many African locations are fenced? Stuck in bed, that's a very difficult question to answer. I can answer generally by saying to you, the national parks and reserves of South Africa tend to be fenced. So all of our national parks and all of our private game reserves are fenced in South Africa, and that is the exception rather than the rule. So if you go up to Kenya, Tanzania, many parts of Zimbabwe, not all parts of Zimbabwe, but some parts of Zimbabwe, many parts of Botswana, not all parts, same in Namibia, many parts but not all, you'll find that the protected areas are not fenced. And often that means that there's a soft boundary between the protected area and the unprotected area that the wildlife can cross. And sometimes that can be very difficult, and sometimes it can be very positive. In a place like the Masai Mara, for instance, it's quite interesting. They have no fences, and the wildlife get into the Maasai villages, but the Maasai, and as long as there is sufficient grazing for their cattle, they just leave the wildlife alone. In parts of southern Africa, there's a lot more conflict, and certainly with elephants, and elephants can get into crop fields and they can be very dangerous, and so that can be quite a difficult thing to deal with for both local people and conservation authorities. And in South Africa, that problem doesn't exist because there's a hard boundary, but it does mean that obviously there's no room for expansion often. So in large parts of the Western Kruger National Park, there are villages right up on the fence. So yeah, that gives you a very broad idea of how it works across the continent. Sadly, it would seem that fencing is going to be on the increase, because as human populations increase, so it becomes necessary to protect both people from the animals and the animals from the people. But there's some innovative people doing things like, instead of fencing the reserve out, fencing the village in, so that the village doesn't have an issue with elephants and the animals can still increase where they are. Right. Sergeant Pepper, you say you're a Zimbabwe girl and you went to Wits. Wits, for those of you who don't know, is the University of the Witwatersrand, which is here in Johannesburg. It's one of South Africa's premier universities. Thank you, Sergeant Pepper. I thought you were a boy on account of your name, Sergeant Pepper, but in fact you are a girl. Kathy, you feel homesick and you've never been here before. Well, Kathy, that's great. You should probably come out here immediately. We'll take you on safari. Stuck in bed, you say, how far is this cam from the Djuma Dam cam? The Djuma Dam cam, as the crow flies from the Sincoro camera, is probably 7 kilometers, 6 kilometers, maybe less, maybe 5 kilometers as the crow flies. It's quite a nice run, actually. You could run from the Nkoro camera to Djuma. On the roads, it's probably about 10 k's, 10 kilometers, 6 miles. Stuck in bed, you say, did I see anything exciting on my safari? Well, in 28 days to Zimbabwe, to Ngala, to Singita and Londolozi, yes, we saw many exciting things. The most exciting being wild dogs and baby leopard cubs, just 8 weeks old. Yay. Cindy, you love being dazzled by these zebras. Yes, I quite like being dazzled by these zebras. They're being very confiding. They're not running away, which is very pleasant of them. Nice of them not to run away. That's, of course, because they don't know we're here. They don't know that we're observing them. That's one of the great advantages of these remote cameras, is that there isn't a human being operating it on site. I would suggest that these are probably 2 stallions who have either lost their ladies to another more fancied stallion, or they're 2 youngsters who have yet to get married. All right, I think let's leave these zebras and let's go back to Tembe. Kathy, you wish all wild animals had a boundary they couldn't cross so they or humans wouldn't be in danger. Yes, Kathy, I think that's a good idea. I'm always saddened when we put up fences, because it means that we failed to get along with wildlife. And, Africa's the last frontier of wildlife. The rest of the world, other than South America perhaps, and in fact only South America, most of the rest of the world is, confined wildlife to such tiny, tiny places. And I just hope that we don't here in Africa go the same way. Anyway, let's move on to some more sounds here at Tembe. The sounds you can hear most there are the bulbuls. The dark-capped bulbul. It's a lovely sound. You can hear the odd cricket. And if those buffalo get close enough, you'll be able to hear them tearing at the grass. The dove seems to have given up. No, there he goes. The red-eyed dove. Just to be clear, I mean, I think there's obviously a road fairly close by as well, in case you're wondering what the underlying hum is. It's not it won't be a big road, but it's obviously a busy time of the day. People going home to their villages in rural KwaZulu. There's an oxpecker sitting on the back of that buffalo. You can hear them buzzing away. Bzz, 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 bzz. Ah, glorious. Now, that's quite interesting. It's almost as if she is alerting me to her presence. That is a buffalo cow that has joined these bulls. And so this is, I mean, officially you'd call it a small breeding herd on account of the fact that there's a cow with them. She doesn't look particularly in the prime of her life. Maybe the herds at Temba are just relatively small, or she's just a little bit bored of being around the rest of the herd and she's joined the boys for a night out on the town, as they say here in Johannesburg. Belinda, you say you love buffalo. Yes, I quite like buffalo myself. I don't think love is a strong term to describe my affection for buffaloes, but yes, I have an appreciation for them, certainly. They don't do an enormous amount. That chap seems to be chewing particularly... Oh. Now there's action. Bit of play wrestling. The bigger chap on the right chased the slightly smaller middle chap into the even chap on the left, who then got a horn in the midriff and moved on. Egyptian geese in the background. Sarah, you say, can I please explain siblicide at the Black Eagles? I didn't see a second chick, so how can we be sure that it was killed by the first one? Aren't we assuming here? Sarah, you're assuming. Absolutely, we're assuming. I didn't see it myself. I'm not sure if it has actually been seen there particularly, but we do know from extensive research on black eagles, and they have been extensively researched throughout Africa, more than 90% of second chicks will be killed by the first chick. So yes, we are making an assumption, but we're doing it with a 90% confidence. So there's a 10% chance that we're wrong. There is a record or two of two Verreaux's eagles or black eagles being raised to adulthood from the same clutch. It's extremely unusual. And for those of you who don't know, what we do know for sure is that second chick in many birds, or what we think is that second chick for many birds is an insurance policy in case the first one dies. And I've just got an update here that we have seen the eagle pick up a small white chick and feed it to the other one. So that's even more disconcerting, I suppose, but confirmation and totally normal. So we've now seen the adult black eagle feeding the smaller, younger chick to the older one. So there's no wastage there. And that's just how it goes. So, Sarah, I'm afraid I think that is confirmation that the chick was killed most likely by its sibling. I mean, it could have just died of cold, I suppose. That's not impossible. But it's most likely 90% chance that it was killed by its sibling and is now being devoured by the sibling. Some of you wondering if the small white chick that was being fed to the other chick was not another bird or a chicken and not a sibling. I mean, I must, again, without having seen this myself, it's very difficult to say. You know, if it's pure white, it's very unlikely it was another kind of bird. And also, black eagles don't really catch other birds. They're not designed to do that. They would if one was happened to be sitting stupidly not looking around. They might take a chicken, yes, for sure. But, a plain white chicken of that size would be something very unusual. So I think that I'm going to stick with the fact, or stick with the assumption and the 90% confidence that there's been the obligate siblicide at the black eagle nest, and that younger chick has now been fed to its older sibling. Totally normal, nothing unusual about that. So Sarah, yes, an assumption, but 90% sure, especially given what we saw after that. Okay, thanks everybody. That was marvellous fun. I enjoyed being back with you for the Africam Show, powered by explore.org, and we'll see you at the same time for this same show next week on a Tuesday at 1600 hours South African Standard Time. Until then, bye-bye.